Hello, this is structured such that you may just listen for convenience. I am just a guide, and welcome to the void. Unfortunately, we both know why you're here. You want to be the one to find the next big discovery. I know it's controversial, it's theorycraft. People say, work on fundamentals. Don't focus on anything that can change patch to patch. And I know. There was nothing that could convince me either. I mean, there's nothing that could convince me. In my mind, it was anything that could change might come back again. That the knowledge that I learned from learning new strategies could be transferred to other concepts. And sure, to a large extent I was right, but it was an excuse. It's a seduction hard to ignore. If you don't watch yourself, you could easily find yourself spending days or weeks manipulating numbers for something that might not even work. That's plan that could just completely fall apart on first contact. It's so heart racing, stressful, that all that effort that you put into something, it might not even work. So, I'm a guide. It's an ocean that you can't. I'm just a guide. Maybe I could. I'm getting off topic. I. We've seen it all before. There's that 1v5 Darius in the side lane, or Aurelia, Riven, etc., who somehow gets a little bit ahead and starts snowballing the team. Now, sure, you could make the argument of course, she's 10 and 5. Of course she's going to do that. But if you look at it from the perspective, they might only have 4 items, 5 items. The people that they are fighting fairly easily, 1v3, 1v4, all have 75% of the items that they have. How are they still winning? I present a very bizarre argument, but in order to explain it more in depth, I wish to tell you about the story, the worst ring in Dark Souls, and how you can use it to become immortal. Now sure, this is a little bit of a detour, but stay with me, considering that there are some concepts that might not be so obvious in League, we can derive from other games in such a way to obtain a competitive advantage. With that being said, what is this ring? Well, it is the Ring of Restoration. It was a ring that was introduced in Dark Souls 2, but then turned into the Sun Princess ring with essentially the same function. 2 HP per second. Considering the nature of Dark Souls, health regeneration, especially passive health regeneration, would typically be considered a really good item. If you took it from the perspective of the average person, starting off would have about 600 HP, easily pass 1000 HP, eventually reaching up to perhaps even 2000 HP. What you could expect from a ring like this is maybe it's decent in the early game, maybe it saves you 1 or 2 hits, but then it's easily outclassed by many of the other rings, especially since if you were to think about it from a percentage point of view, if you were to fill up half of your HP in the mid game, 1000 HP, cutting it in half by 500, and you were to heal that 2 HP per second, 500 divided by 2, 250, you're talking about 250 seconds. If my math is correct, that's a little bit over 4 minutes. Essentially, you are paying time to heal up. It is not a very good ring from that perspective. But, although I'm not exactly sure about the practicality in Dark Souls 2, I have done it in Dark Souls 3. So how is this and how can we apply it to League? Well, It has to do with the concept of effective health. Keep in mind that this is fundamental. You might have heard the term effective health from other games, but it is essentially the perceived amount of derived from the perspective of the enemy, and it is a value that is factored using armor and HP. So for example, let's say that you take half HP damage from any attack that is dealt to you. You have 10 HP and the enemy is attacking for 2 HP. Normally, without the armor, they would kill you in 5 hits. 10 HP down to 8, 6, 4, 2, 0. With the 50% damage reduction, you are cutting that damage in half, down from 2 to 1. Effectively, doubling the amount of hits that it would take to kill you, and therefore doubling your effective HP. However, if you are familiar with League of Legends, you would know that armor is calculated in such a way to also be a percentage reduction. Now, in Dark Souls, it is a little bit different. While the equations are very similar to that in League, in terms of their practicality, there is also a flat damage reduction associated in the game. And something that you will come to find is that typically percentage reduction alongside flat reduction is a very abusable combination. So how do we take advantage of this? Well, I'd lie to you a little bit. While it is an abusable combination, it is only abusable if percentage is calculated first and then flat is calculated after. Let me give you an example. Take our 10 HP character again, but this time you're going up against somebody who does 6 damage. Perhaps you can make the argument that because they take 2 hits, you have 12 effective HP. But let's say that you have, alongside 50% damage reduction, you also have 2-point flat damage reduction. Let's say that you were to calculate flat first. You were to cut down the 6 HP to 4, calculating the flat first, and then you would cut it in half with the percentage, such that the enemy now does 2 HP, giving you an effective health of 5 hits. However, if you were to calculate percentage first, 6 damage is then cut down to 3, then the 2 damage reduction cuts the final damage down to 1. From our first calculation, we have thus proved that if you were to calculate flat damage first, the final damage comes out to being half as effective. Remember, the point being that if you calculate percentage first, then it is more effective. How does this affect HP regen though? Let us go back to our 10 HP character. Let's say that our enemy attacks 6 per second. Let's say that our enemy attacks for 6 damage a second, and our ring heals for 2. Our health goes down to 4, then up to 6, then down to 0. It might as well that we not have the ring. This is largely a big reason against taking the ring. But let us say that we have a simple 2 flat damage reduction again. So you start off with 10 HP, you go down to 6, then you heal up to 8, 4, 6, 2, and all of a sudden you can see how you're a lot stronger. However, this isn't nearly enough to truly be effective. How does this ring make you immortal? If you were to look at it from the base game, with the heaviest armor and the maximum defense rings, you could probably reach around 90 to 95% damage reduction from the perspective of the damage being reduced, including the flat damage reduction. This should be perceived from the perspective of how much damage from the enemy are you healing. Before, 2 HP per second was absolutely nothing. It was a hair on your health bar. But if you're all of a sudden being able to take 20 to 30 hits, you're healing a good third of the hit. Therefore, multiplying the amount of hits that you need to take in order to go down by 30%. But then, we can push this idea further. What if you were to have a second healing item? Now, in the second game, there wasn't necessarily such thing. You would have to go as consumables or a specific spell. However, in Dark Souls 3, there were multiple ways to get healing over time, and especially in modded, there were even more options, slightly powerful options, and you can kind of see where this is going. Let's say that with defenses, you were able to reduce the amount of damage that the enemies were able to do to you all the way down to 20. And then what if I were to say that the amount of HP regen per second can be amplified up to 10? That being said, you completely negate the amount of damage that the enemy is able to do to you from just 2 seconds of not being hit. Just 2 seconds of not being hit, and all of a sudden you're healed up again. Now, albeit this is a way bigger concept, but this is the introduction of green theory. The idea that all stats can influence others. It's a very basic concept. I mean, just think about it. You have the obvious attack speed increases the usefulness of attack damage. The more attack speed you have, the more attacks you can do, and each attack has its own attack damage. Overall, both increasing your DPS, but multiplying the effectiveness of each other. But then what if you added health to the equation? All of a sudden, the more health you have, the longer you're able to stay alive, and therefore the more max total damage you're able to do. Considering that armor increases your max effective health, you can kind of see where this is going. Later on, we can discuss movement speed, cooldown reduction, lifesteal. It truly is about the ratio of damage per healing. What you would want to do is minimize the amount of damage that you receive while amplifying the amount of healing that you receive. It is better if it is not conditional. Healing over time is one of the most valuable stats in all of RPG games, truly because it is the most non-conditional forms of healing in the game. If you surpass this ratio, being damage per healing, you will out-heal the damage that you receive. You don't even need to out-heal the damage. All you need to do is get it close to 1. You just need to try and match the damage that you receive. This was just an introduction, very fundamental, but as they'll tell you, fundamentals are important. Think about the idea a little bit in your head. So, if you look at it from this perspective, the multiplication of stats per stat, by stat, you can understand a character simply having an extra item could be almost twice as effective. This is only a little bit of insight as to you can get a 1v3, 1v4 scenario with the soul fed person coming out on top. From the perspective that stats multiply upon each other, this simple concept, it becomes a little bit more believable that such a thing is able to happen, even though they might have 1 or 1.5 more items with respect to 3 people having a total combined 9 items. Gold on a single person becomes more valuable the more gold that there is on that person. And in some cases, the power can grow exponentially, as shown. This is fundamental, sure, but you'll soon see that these concepts spiral out of control very fast. We'll see that very soon, in which case, see you in the next video.